The first topic within that online article was about how we design the material as academics in conjunction with individuals who we perceive on our programs who aren't picking up as many of these good degrees as other groups. And this is really important because what it does in this article is say, okay, so us as academics, we have an important and pivotal role regardless of how well our program is performing in terms of closing these awarding gaps. We have a role to best boost or help our students as much as we can. And that's not to say that everybody within that cohort or everyone within that demographic needs this assistance, but it's trying to level the playing field, which for us is pivotal. It's vital that we make sure that everybody has the necessary tools to succeed. And so in terms of how we design material, what I proposed was oftentimes when we are teaching material as academics, we might be very experienced, we might have solid expertise in that particular area. And as such, it might be quite easy for us to assume a certain degree of knowledge, or for us to assume that everybody knows how to action a request. Everybody knows how to access certain material. And in accessing that material, we also might assume that everybody is going to be having similar, even cognitive mechanisms in terms of how they understand it and how they apply it. But this might not be the case. It also might be some of the examples that we're presenting individuals. It might be that if we make cultural references, especially in the UK setting, I realized that a couple of years ago, I made a reference to Rosie and Jim, which is a 10, 12-year-old cartoon puppet animatronic show about two people on a barge. And not only does this kind of show my age, but it also kind of isolated a particular group of individuals who I was sharing this story to, because lots of other people within that classroom couldn't access and fully kind of understand that example. And if the examples that we're giving aren't accessible, what that means is that students are left trying to pick up the pieces, and it's almost if we're kind of assuming a certain degree of knowledge to them. And so the key point about this point is that we work with students to design some of the materials. Is it visually accessible? In terms of telling stories and examples, are those stories and examples relevant? Are they contemporary? Are they digestible by demographics within our teaching cohort?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things, I guess, to pick up on. The first one is Rosie and Jim. I'm sure that's more than 10 or 15 years ago, mate. You're probably thinking 20, 25 years. So yeah, you definitely need to update your examples in sessions, I think. More seriously though, I think with this particular point, I spoke to you at the time when you were writing this, and I think I had a slight issue with this particular point. And I think you've kind of alleviated some of those issues. So I know that the kind of co-production of material is big in terms of things like decolonizing the curriculum. And I've been into a few things. Maybe that's a topic for another day, but I'm not convinced by some of those methods, to be honest. But I think the idea of making things more accessible in terms of, are these things understandable? Are the examples that you're using accessible? Is the way that you're teaching conducive to understanding? I think that's a great idea, and I think making sure that that students are involved in that is a really nice idea, really nice way of making sure that what you're doing makes sense. I guess where I would potentially, I don't know if draw the line is too harsh, but where I would start to question it is about content. So are we suggesting that students should be involved in designing the content of a course or not? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so there's that stance, isn't there? And it's a stance I really agree with, is that we are the experts in that particular field. We have that particular knowledge. And so I think that in terms of what we include, as long, and again, it's quite difficult to talk to an audience that's made up of lots of different backgrounds. As long as what we're talking about isn't isolating, isn't offensive, I think that the academics should have quite a lot of free flow with the content that they're teaching. For me, it's more in terms of how we design and talk about that content, perhaps, so that it is as accessible as possible.